Cautiously, he pressed against the ivory door, and it swung silently inward. On the shimmering threshold, Conan stared like a wolf in strange surroundings, ready to fight or flee on the instant. He was looking into a large chamber with a domed golden ceiling. The walls were of green jade, the floor of ivory, partly covered by thick rugs. Smoke, an exotic scent of incense floated up from a brazier on a golden tripod, and behind it sat an idol on a sort of a marble couch. Conan stared aghast. The image had the body of a man, naked and green in color, but the head was one of nightmare and madness. Too large for the human body, it had no attributes of humanity. Conan stared at the wide, flaring ears, the curling proboscis, on either side of which stood white tusks tipped with round golden balls. The eyes were closed as if in sleep. This, then, was the reason for the name, the Tower of the Elephant. For the head of the thing was much like that of the beast described by the Shemitish wanderer. This was Yara's god. Where, then, should the gem be but concealed in the idol, since the stone was called the elephant's heart? As Conan came forward, his eyes fixed on the motionless idol, the eyes of the thing opened suddenly. The Cimmerian froze in his tracks. It was no image. It was a living thing, and he was trapped in its chamber. Hello, and welcome to the Atlantean Archive. Today we'll be talking about another Robert E. Howard Conan story, this time, The Tower of the Elephant. You know, if you asked me what Robert E. Howard Conan story I thought was the best, it would come down to two particular stories, which are so close together, it's really hard for me to choose which one is the best. That would be The Tower of the Elephant, that we're talking about here, and The Scarlet Citadel. The Scarlet Citadel is probably going to have to get my vote for just the best Conan story, simply because of the grandeur of the work, the sweeping scope of the work, and the detail that Robert E. Howard poured into it. You've got the story of Conan, king of Aquilonia, who is betrayed and defeated in a battle with a confederation of enemies. He's taken prisoner, he has to escape and go and fight for his kingdom. And again, the detail that Howard pours into every aspect of that story, including into the battle sequences at the end. He's got very clear ideas about troop movements, everything outlined, right down to what the various combatants are actually wearing as they go into the battle. Robert E. Howard, far from just being a pulp writer who was just banging out stories to make a quick buck, he did that on occasion. Some of the Conan stories you can read and you're like, okay, he's looking for a check here. But although there's something enjoyable about everything that he wrote, he just fills it with such energy and such imagination. But in certain stories, you could tell that his heart was really in it. His imagination was on fire. He was just living in the moment. And The Scarlet Citadel is one of those. And for that reason, I think would have to get my vote as the best Conan story. The Tower of the Elephant, however, is right there next to it. It's a shorter story. In fact, if you have someone that you've not introduced Robert E. Howard to, or if you've never introduced them to his Conan stories, or you yourself watching this video, you've never read any of these, you've never read Howard, you've never read Conan, you're saying, well, where should I start? The Tower of the Elephant is a great place to start. It's a shorter story. It moves along at a brisk pace. It has the very best of everything that Howard did well. All of that is represented in this story. The things that most detract from Howard's work are mainly absent from this story. There's very little in here that smacks of what people consider tawdry pulp type fiction, anything. This is a story where everything works. The story is great itself. It's got a twist in it, which is intriguing. There is detailed descriptions where they're appropriate, and it's not too much. It's not something that just goes on forever and ever. We get the description we need to really put us into the world that Robert E. Howard's envisioning here, and place us right there beside Conan. You don't have too many characters in this story, so Robert E. Howard doesn't have to spread the action and dialogue over several different characters. You don't have this massive cast that you've got to do something with. So he's able to concentrate on just a couple characters and make the story fold around those characters. All of these things really work, and they work very, very well. You also get something of a glimpse of Conan that, as far as I remember from all of the Conan stories, and there's a lot of them I haven't read for a while, but you get a glimpse of Conan in this story that you don't quite see elsewhere. In this story, Conan is a thief. He's a young man. He's out looking for adventure and treasure. He's already had a hard life, as he conveys to someone in the story. And he finds himself in a situation where he's looking to just make a quick score, a massive score, as a matter of fact. And then he abruptly finds himself changing directions. He does a complete about face and ends up participating in an act of vengeance. It's very interesting. It's a great look at the character. And I think that we get some glimpses of Robert E. Howard's look at history in this story as well. It's not upfront to where, he's not being preachy about it, but it's built into this in one of those classic show don't tell type ways that is extremely expressive. So to encapsulate the story, Conan, again, a young thief, he's in a Zamorian city, and he's in a particular part of the city that's known for its low life, basically. Howard starts off the story by describing this place. It's not a place that respectable people are found. There's all sorts of stuff that goes on here, and Howard indicates that even the guards who are supposed to be keeping an eye on things in this portion of the city, they're paid off a lot of times, so they're looking the other way. This is the kind of place where if you go into a tavern to have a drink, you sit with your back to the wall if you don't want a knife stuck in it. So Conan finds himself in this place, and he overhears a conversation. There is a Kothite who has come up from the south, and Howard tells us that he's come up to teach the Zamorans the art of woman stealing. Although he notes at this part of the story that the Zamorans are born knowing more about that subject than this guy could ever possibly learn himself in his own lifetime. And he's talking about a woman that he is planning to sell, that he's been tracking, and he's going to sell this person. And he mentions something called the Tower of the Elephant and the Elephant's Heart, the jewel in the tower, the great treasure of the elephant's tower. And he's tapped on the shoulder, and there's Conan, barbarian, rough-looking wilderness man, standing there asking him what he's talking about. What is this tower he's heard so much about? What is the treasure? What is the heart of the elephant? What exactly is this? And they basically laugh him to scorn, this Kothite and his friends in the tavern. It eventually goes too far, and Conan does some classic Conan-style slaying before he slips out. But Conan learns enough. He knows that this place, this tower, is 150 feet high. It's a magnificent structure built by a high priest, an evil sorcerer named Yara, who's supposed to be centuries old. Practitioner of black magic, obviously. And the tower is guarded by certain things. When Conan asks what sort of things, they laugh at him again. Yes, there are guards in the tower, they tell him, but those guards really are not needed because of what patrols the gardens around the tower. And when Conan asks for more information, they basically laugh at him. It's possible they don't know themselves. They're just spreading more rumor. But there's an interesting statement in here, very, very Conan-like comment that he makes when the Kushite, or the Kothite, is basically laughing Conan to scorn and telling him, tell us how you're going to steal this gem. Explain it to all of these people in this room, who were thieves before you were even born. How are you going to pull off what no one has ever been able to do, what no man can do? And Conan makes this remark, there is always a way if the desire be coupled with courage. Yeah, definitely a Conan thing to say. So after the argument in the tavern, after Conan's had one insult too many and some skulls get split, Conan takes off for the Tower of the Elephant. Again, this magnificent structure surrounded by a garden. And he's looking for a way to get in. He's also trying to be leery of whatever guards this place. Again, he's heard that there's some kind of menace in here worse than the human guard could be. And suddenly he finds himself running into another man, large, rather fat individual. And they confront each other. And this man introduces himself as Taurus. And Conan knows the name. Immediately, he recognizes this name. This is the man they call the Prince of thieves. He has also come to take on the challenge of the Tower of the Elephant. And Taurus likes Conan's grit. He likes his style. So he decides to take this young man along with him. They join forces, and together they're going to try to get into the tower, overcome all the obstacles, and steal whatever the heart of the elephant is. Again, no one really knows at this point. So they get about the business of scaling the tower with some rope, some line that Taurus has available. And as they're getting up, trying to scale the tower, suddenly lions appear. And Taurus pulls out this powder, this, what he says comes from the yellow lotus. And he tells Conan that the very story of how he stole this, the whole saga, would be worth a tale in and of itself. But there are lions below there. Conan can see them because he can see their eyes reflecting back in the darkness. And Taurus blows out the powder from the yellow lotus, and it settles down over the lions. They inhale this, and they drop dead, pretty well right where they are. It's that potent. So they're about to go about their business, and suddenly Conan's instincts are alerted, those primitive barbarian instincts honed in the wilderness that Robert E. Howard uses in so many of Conan's stories. Conan turns and pulls his sword just in time to kill yet another lion that has come up on them soundlessly. And that's one of the things that makes this story effective, is the eeriness. There's a quiet eeriness around the Tower of the Elephant. The lions, when they are stalking Conan and Taurus, they make no noise whatsoever. And when they die without a sound. And when Conan runs this one through with his sword and it falls on him, again, it doesn't make a sound. And Conan is really weirded out by this. Conan's a brave guy. He's been through a lot of stuff, but he's not dumb. He has a healthy respect for the supernatural. He knows there are certain things that are real and dangerous and not to be trifled with. And his hackles are really raised by all of this. So he and Taurus go ahead. They scale the Tower of the Elephant. They reach the top. And Conan notes that the top is encrusted with jewels. It's like a marble tower. This thing is beautiful. And the top is surrounded by jewels. And Conan's looking at this thing thinking this is a fantastic fortune just all by itself. And Taurus tells him, don't waste your time with that. He says, we'll get all of the wealth of this entire place once we acquire the heart of the elephant, whatever that is. So they finally scale the tower. They finish with that. They get in. There's a chamber they're about to go into. And Taurus tells Conan, go back, take a look over the side, make sure nobody's following us, make sure we're in the clear. Conan doesn't quite like this. He's got respect for this guy, but he doesn't trust him. There's no honor among thieves, as they say, and Conan doesn't know how far this partnership is going to go, obviously. But he does what Taurus requests of him. He's suspicious, but he does it. He goes and looks, and he hears something behind him. He turns and looks behind him, and Taurus comes stumbling out of the chamber that he just went to investigate, and falls over dead in front of Conan. And he doesn't have a mark on him that Conan is able to find. He gets down, he's searching him, but then he does see something right between the man's shoulder blades. He sees these 3 puncture marks of some kind, but he still has no idea what has happened to this guy. What could have killed a man like Taurus, a skilled, legendary thief like this guy? So cautiously, he goes into the room that Taurus was in to investigate. And at first he doesn't see anything but chests of jewels and gold. And again, he's absolutely overawed. Howard says that this is more wealth than Conan has ever imagined exists in the entire world. And he can't imagine if all of this is just surrounding the heart of the elephant, then what is the heart of the elephant itself? What kind of fantastic treasure could that be? As he's contemplating this, he's attacked by, of course, a giant spider. Something you'd find in Sword and Sorcery. And this is an instance where this kind of thing works really well. Howard does a great job describing Conan's battle with the spider. This thing, Howard tells us, is the size of a pig. So this is a big monster. And it comes at Conan with an intelligence. It doesn't just charge him and he doesn't just, cleave the thing in two. No, this thing comes at him and it spins web and flings it at him. It's got an intelligence about it, and it jumps from place to place, and they're circling one another. Conan cuts off one of its legs finally, but he's still in a battle with this thing for his life. And ultimately, Conan is finally able to kill the spider, and he does so by grabbing one of the jeweled chests in his last extremities before he can be completely covered with web and rendered helpless. He grabs this chest, and he heaves it with all of his strength and crushes the spider and kills the thing. Finally, he gets loose. And he begins to go into another chamber, and he's wondering what else is in here. How much further does he have to penetrate into this place to find the heart of the elephant? Because again, he still really does not know what he's looking for. So he enters this room, and we get into the excerpt from the story that I read at the very beginning of the video, where he sees what appears to be an idol seated on a marble couch. And then he realizes this thing is alive, and it doesn't look like anything that should be alive. Conan has never seen an elephant before, but he's been told by a Shemite what elephants look like. And thinking back, he used to think, well, that's just stupid. Shemites are full of it, whatever. A creature like that can't possibly exist. But sure enough, here this thing, although it may not be exactly what is meant by an elephant, sure matches the guy's description. It's got the elephant head. It's got the body of the man. It's green. And as Conan is looking at this thing, he begins to realize also that once he knows that it's alive, it moves. It has blind eyes, but the eyes roll around, and it's asking who is in the room. And Conan sees that this thing has been tortured. And this is a moment when we get something in Conan's character that I don't think we see anywhere else in the stories. Not that I remember anyway. Maybe I'm wrong. Remind me, put it in the comments if I am wrong about this. But it's the only instance I can remember of this. Conan does act in some stories with compassion. He helps people. He's rescuing women all the time. The old damsels in distress motif, that sort of thing. But in this case, we get something a little different from him. And it's interesting enough that I thought it would be worthwhile reading here, especially if you're not real familiar with Conan. This may intrigue you to take another look at the character, or maybe think a little more about it if you have read these things in the past and you're revisiting this. So Conan sees that this thing is alive, and it speaks. "Who is here? Have you come to torture me again, Yara? Will you never be done? Oh, Yakosha, is there no end to agony?" Tears rolled from the sightless eyes, and Conan's gaze strayed to the limbs stretched on the marble couch. And he knew the monster would not rise to attack him. He knew the marks of the rack and the searing brand of the flame, and tough-souled as he was, he stood aghast at the ruined deformities which his reason told him had once been limbs as comely as his own. And suddenly all fear and repulsion went for him, to be replaced by a great pity. What this monster was, Conan could not know, but the evidences of its sufferings were so terrible and pathetic that a strange, aching sadness came over the Cimmerian. He knew not why. He only felt that he was looking upon a cosmic tragedy, and he shrank with shame, as if the guilt of a whole race were laid upon him. To my knowledge, we never see Conan respond with this kind of grief and shame in any of the other stories. He spends a lot of time angered and outraged and even frightened by things. Again, he's got a great respect for the supernatural. But I don't think we ever see anything like this again in another Conan story. He sees this creature, and once he realizes that it's not going to hurt him, he sees that it has actually been hurt itself, that it has been tortured, in fact. He can see the marks of torture on it. And when it speaks with that great pathetic voice, all of his compassion is stirred up in him, and he feels shame because he begins to realize at this point, even though he doesn't know the whole story, that his race, the race of man, has done this to this creature, which even then, at this point, just having met it, he can begin to see is inoffensive. The creature, Yakosha, like something right out of Lovecraft's mythos, tells him its story as he's sitting there, and Conan listens. Yakosha and his race came from the far corners of the universe. They came to Earth upon wings at one time. They were able to fly somehow through the distance of space. And they have seen the formation of man on the earth. They know Conan's people. Yakosha tells him, "I have known your race from of old. I know who you are. I know your people." And over time, as long-lived as these creatures are, they're not completely immortal. They do eventually die. Yakosha is the last of his kind. And over time in his life, he's been worshipped as a god by humans. And he's tried to instruct them. And eventually he met a man named Yara, who was eager to learn from him. But he notes that Yara did not want to learn just the white magic, just the helpful things that Yara was trying to teach men in order to better their existence. He wanted the secrets of the dark side, as we might say. And Yara was not willing to teach him these things. So ultimately, Yara found a way by sorcery to capture and enslave Yara, and he has kept him ever since then, and he's been torturing him. Probably, we're not really told why, partly out of cruelty, partly probably to try to pry more secrets out of him. But at this point, this creature just wants to die. It's miserable. It's been kept here for God knows how long. It's been horribly treated. Again, Conan sees that this is a noble being, an intelligent being who should never have been treated like this. And he's moved with this great pity. And then at that part of the story, after Yara has told him his backstory, he asks Conan to help him in one last act of vengeance, one last display of magic, which he says has never been seen on your earth and never will be again. And it's interesting that Conan, as absolutely fascinated as he is by all of the gold, the jewelry, and everything, this king's ransom worth of wealth that he's found here, is so moved and so caught up in the story, and apparently moved with outrage toward the sorcerer Yara as well, that he agrees to take up the offer, and he helps Yara get his vengeance in a very creative sword and sorcery way. So I won't spoil the story for those of you who have not read it. Those of you who have, if you've got comments about it, you want to discuss anything about it, feel free to do so in the comments. Be happy to reply. This, again, a fantastic Conan story. Everything works in this story. Great story, great pacing, minimal number of characters, minimal number of things for Conan to be concerned about. He's able to focus. He's got this laser focus on what he's doing. Then you get the unexpected twist. You get far more of a significant tale than you were actually looking for. Ends in a way you just do not expect going into this thing. So I would call this really a perfect sword and sorcery story, a perfect Robert E. Howard story. This is a 10, and a great story to introduce someone to who has not read Howard, or especially Conan, because again, it is short. It's much more to the point, and it moves at such a brisk pace. There's not much chance they're going to get bored with it. A few other observations on this, just for those of you who, like me, really like to delve into stories, especially if you know something about the author. Many of you probably know that Robert E. Howard was not a great fan of civilization. Howard was a brooding figure, probably much like King Kull in his stories. He thought a great deal. He was a student of history. He saw a great deal about history that he did not like. And he brings that out in his stories. Again, when this story starts, you get this description of this part of a city, which is really where the dregs live. This is where all the bad news happens. But at the same time, you have the contrast in this garden with this gargantuan, beautiful tower that supposedly holds some fabulous kind of wealth, but it's also known to hold great terrors and darkness in it. I think this is Howard's way, especially when you get it, and you'll see what I mean. I think if you read the story, you read the beginning of it, and you see how Howard describes it, the debauchery going on in this part of the city, in contrast to this beautiful tower. Yet even the tower holds darkness and death and peril inside of it, and was erected by an extraordinarily evil man. I think this, in a way, is Howard's commentary that civilization, for all its luster and all of its monuments to itself, all of the beauty that it heaps on itself and the way that it celebrates itself and pretends to be so much better than the barbarians or all empires who have come before it, it still holds great darkness. You have this terrible contrast. In another story, Conan talks about people who starve, leaning on the walls of places where there is plenty of food. This is the kind of thing that he sees going on in civilizations, the kind of thing Howard saw. So you've got this tremendous contrast here. Great beauty in the midst of great debauchery, and yet even the beauty itself holds terror and death and evil. To put it in biblical terms, basically this Tower of the Elephant is a whitewashed tomb. Beautiful on the outside, grisly on the inside, in spite of the wealth that it holds. I think that's one way that Howard reflected on that, but a man of deep thoughts. And I think we get some of that in this story, The Tower of the Elephant, just as much as the adventure. There's some deep thinking going on behind the scenes. Howard is trying to tell us some stuff. So, great story, highly recommended, especially to anybody new to Howard and to Conan in particular. So, thank you for watching. Please do like the video if you enjoyed the content. Subscribe to the channel. Share the content with anyone that you may think would be interested in it. If you'd like, leave a comment. Liking, subscribing, commenting, all of these things make channels like this much more visible. That's how the YouTube algorithm works. You know that every channel you go to, everything you watch, subscribe, click the bell, all that kind of stuff. So probably don't have to repeat it. But if you do like this content, you want to support efforts like myself and things that others are doing as well and talking about these stories, do give it a like and a subscribe. So appreciate that and look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks and God bless.